want to start with you in the reporting, and I want to ask you to piece together the significance of what Ratcliffe offered Waldron and how Trump sought to seize that to operationalize the voting machine seizure by his national security agencies.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nicole. So as the allies of Donald Trump and Donald Trump himself are trying to overturn the 2020 election, they need to have a veneer of legality to these efforts. They can't just come in and seize voting machines for no reason. They can't demand Mike Pence throw out legitimate votes and accept Trump electors instead for no reason. So they need some sort of veneer of a reason. And Phil Waldron down in Texas comes up with this idea that it is China's manipulation of the American voting system that they're going to hope happened or believe happened, right? And so he believes that Ratcliffe will put forward a report that will find this. The problem is, one, Ratcliffe doesn't put forward a report before January 6th. And two, when he does, it finds no such thing. It says China wasn't flipping votes. They didn't seize control of machines. They didn't take any of these actions that the Trump allies believed they would take. But because this stuff hasn't been shot down in the minds of Waldron and the minds of President Trump and others, they continue on with these plans and this effort to act like this stuff is real, and therefore they can take these extreme measures to try to keep Donald Trump in power, including exploring whether any one of three different federal agencies would be willing to seize voting machines in 6 states. So, yes, really extreme stuff, and everything we learn about it each day makes the plot look even more threatening to democracy.
You know, I mean, Michael Steele, what's so extraordinary about these two pieces of reporting this week that Lucas bylined on is they are both Trump-directed plots. And the through line is Trump, and it's only Trump. There is no other through line. We'll explain. I'm going to ask Luke to explain to folks who Waldron is. He plugs into Flynn allegedly through DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, which is an agency in which they both served, I believe, during the Obama administration. But the only through line between all these, kooks, cranks, has-beens, and you want to remember how bad Flynn was. He wasn't just someone who confessed to the lies he told to the FBI. He's someone who Chris Christie warned Donald Trump not to bring into the West Wing in 2016. How bad was Mike Flynn? He was so bad that Chris Christie said, don't let him near the Oval. Talk about what we're learning about what Trump sought to do and the people he sought to do it with after losing.
Well, just hats off to Luke in his reporting and coverage here, because it is a gnarly story to unravel in many respects, and it takes the kind of dogged work to sort of connect these dots in a way that stand the scrutiny that will come from those on the right who will, just sort of, it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, is some, left-wing reporter. The facts are the facts. And here's the rub to your point, Nicole, which I think people fundamentally need to understand, because you're beginning to see it unfold through stories that are presented to you by writers like Luke. Trump controls all of this. There are two elements of this relationship. One, those who control, and those who want to be controlled, who allow it to happen. The Mike Flynn's of the world and others, they want to be in that orbit. They agree with this ideology of authoritarianism. And Trump is the avatar of that. He's the one who they see as the best available to control that scenario. Trump wants to control that scenario. Nothing happens in his gambit, in his orbit, unless he wants it to happen. This is not confusing nor unclear. Donald Trump has his finger on the pulse of everything. So if he's presented with an idea that furthers that goal and that objective to overturn the results of the 2020 election, he will surround himself with the individuals who will help get that done. And he will rely on those individuals to fulfill that particular mission. And whether that means taking someone out of a job, and putting someone else in that job, even though your administration is done, you've lost the election, that's what you're going to do. And so I think the narrative is going to be further exposed here, that how much of this was actually directed, not just kind of on the fly, oh, gee, what do you think we should do, but orchestrated, planned out, thought through, and actually directed, and not just by the minions, but with Trump's finger on that particular lever to achieve that outcome. And I don't think we can fool ourselves any longer into believing that that thing that we see in front of us isn't the thing that we see. Our president of the United States orchestrated the overturn of the results of an election in which he had lost, to further his ambition and aim to seize onto and hold power. That's it. Call the thing what it is, America, and then you'll begin to understand and appreciate these stories that Luke and others are putting in front of us. They're not made up narratives. This is facts based on documents. These people are so brazen, they talked about it. They wrote it in emails. They put it in text messages because they believed they could, they'd be successful. And even if they weren't, Nicole, they wouldn't be touched.
That's it. And I mean, I think Carol Leonnig, one of the first places I read about all of this in black and white was in the earliest excerpts that leaked from your book with Phil Rucker, I Alone Can Fix It. And I remember reaching out to the two of you and saying, oh my God, these people were worse than we thought. And I think if you could sort of pull Ratcliffe into the narrative that you stitched together, Trump sought to corrupt every national security agency. And if you look at the way Waldron, which should be thought of as sort of a Flynn mini-me, minus, I guess, the conviction and pardon so far, he sought to take a Ratcliffe assessment about China and use it as the rationale for extreme national security measures. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think that what's so interesting about this is you can't come up with a strong enough cliche for grasping at straws. The president was grasping at every wisp of a possibility of how he could overturn this election. And it began, in a sense, in, the day after the election. And he essentially was telling everyone that didn't agree with him that the election was rigged or he could find evidence that it was rigged, he tuned them out. And he tuned in people like Michael Flynn, and he tuned in people like Rudy and Sidney Powell. And as part of that as well, there had been pressure on Ratcliffe and the people below him in the intelligence agency to try to say that Russia wasn't interfering in the election, all the way back to the summer, that Russia wasn't trying to do anything, that it was China. So the president President Trump already had his fingers heavy on the scales, pushing that intelligence agency to give bad intel back to him, which he could use to justify. I want to stress one more thing about the importance of this moment when, in December, about the effort to claim the election had been rigged and machines could be seized. December 2nd is the first time Michael Flynn says in a tweet the president might want to rerun the election because it was rigged. Yeah. And on December 17th, he then gives an interview to Newsmax, one of the president's favorite outlets, to again say martial law should be declared. Let's set aside the Constitution because this election was rigged. On December 18th, the president meets with Michael Flynn in a 3-hour meeting, Sidney Powell, Rudy, a host of folks, national security officials, intel officials, all on the line, his White House counsel, all of them talking about the president's new favorite idea, seize the machines, rerun the election. What's funny and not so funny about this is, remember all the theories that have been ginned up as Luke and Michael correctly described, a veneer to make this claim. Sidney Powell said rigged machines from Venezuela affected the election. Rudy said about a day later, a bunch of dead people were allowed to vote or their names were used in all sorts of swing states. And then the next great idea is China interfered in the election. Anything that could be plausible was used. And I'd stress one more thing. Imagine, usually we say, again, another cliche, third time's a charm. Every single time the president tried to push these three national security agencies, he lost. Imagine what would have happened if somebody had been more supplicant, more obedient at DOD, Homeland Security, or the Department of Justice.